So today we will be discussing about streamlining technology in non-techy terms and how it can considerably reduce costs, why you should review your technology and process stack, beyond technology and how the right technology and process impact users. So overall, on this webinar, we'll be able to learn how to be safe, smart, and intentional with decisions you make, protect your business, minimize waste, and reduce the risk. So I actually presented this slide a while ago. I'm not sure if you have heard me a while ago, but I'm Ram, and I bring over 12 years of experience in the sales industry. My background includes leadership roles in customer service and operations. I focus on building strong teams, enhancing service quality, and improving workflows. So for the past 2 years, I've been serving as a business development specialist at PCSN. And in this role, I help uncover new growth opportunities, strengthen client relationships, and align our strategic goals with what our customers really need. So today we also have our special guest speaker. We have Chad Reinbold.
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to personally welcome every one of you to today's seminar or webinar. I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and since there is a lot of information on this one, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Today, we have a lot of information to cover. This is going to be talking about some basic steps for a disaster recovery plan. And of course, these are not all inclusive, but these are some of the very important steps that you can take to having a good working disaster recovery plan for your organization. Then afterwards, after we've talked about each one of these steps a little bit, we'll have just a short wrap up and then hopefully some time for questions for everyone. So let me start with a quick story so that you can kind of know where I'm coming from. Our organization has supported a large health clinic for a number of years, and they weren't, or they aren't in a floodplain. They're not near the coast as far as they don't have to worry about any kind of hurricane. There's not really a big earthquake risk where they're at. So they felt pretty secure from disasters. And a lot of times when people think of disaster preparedness, that's what they think of as natural disasters. But for this organization, one Friday evening, the water main in their maintenance closet broke. This is the main water main that comes in for the entire building. This building is about 30,000 square feet. So this wasn't a small leak. This is the main water pipe coming into the building that snapped, and it flooded the building starting on Friday afternoon. They estimate about an hour or two after the last employee left, and the water kept running until Monday morning. So when the staff arrived on Monday, the water was shooting out from the brick vents on the outside of the building, and the entire building had between 15 and 18 inches of standing water in every single room. So that's a disaster for sure. But thanks to prior planning with this organization and working with us, this clinic had a good, proper disaster recovery plan in place, or at least some of the steps that we're about to talk about. They had cloud backups. They had all of their equipment up off of the floor. And within 24 hours, they were able to have an operating temporary location. So they were able to start seeing patients. They had no data loss and they had minimal service interruption. Now, the cleanup afterwards was a little bit more than 24 hours, but obviously the most important part of their operations was able to continue. So we've been through that. We can see what disaster preparedness can do, proper disaster preparedness. So that's what we're going to be talking about is some of those things. So the first one is developing the plan. You actually have to sit down and come up with that plan. You need to design recovery steps and the order. You need to think about your servers, your applications, maybe some key files that you have, and you need to come up with a plan based on all of those. That list for some businesses might be very extensive. You need to identify critical systems and users. So what system is most critical to keeping revenue coming in the front door? or what system is most critical in order to keep your business running and not have you shut the doors. A lot of people don't think about that as far as what user is most important. If you're a doctor's office, what user and computer is the most important to keeping patients flowing through the doors? So that's things that you need to write down. What's your most important system, your most important user, your most important computer, your most important room, because it might be a whole room that you need to get running first. The next step is that you need to assign roles to team members. Now, assigning roles means that you need to establish responsibilities with each one of your existing team members, and they need to take an active participation in the disaster recovery process. So they need to have clearly defined response roles that help reduce confusion. They need to know exactly what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, and how they're supposed to do it. Then, after you've come up with all that and you have a basic shell of a plan, you need to store it somewhere. Now, storage is one thing that we're going to be talking about in depth in a little bit, but for our purposes here, you want to make sure that you have a digital copy, of course, so that it can be accessed, adjusted, changed. You want something that's easily manipulated so that you can. You need to think about it as something that's alive. It's going to continue to grow and change with you and your business and the landscape. Second thing is, every time you make a revision to it, maybe you have a meeting once a quarter, you need to print that and you need to have it stored somewhere in a fireproof safe, maybe a safety deposit box, somewhere offsite. We know another organization where they lost the entire building in a tornado. There was nothing left but the slab. So that's why you need to think about storing things offsite. And of course, your offsite backup should include a copy of your disaster recovery plan. And again, we're going to talk about offsite backups in a few minutes and more in depth. The next thing that we want to do is we want to implement a comprehensive backup strategy. Now, this backup strategy is going to be more than just your computers, but obviously your computers and your IT is the biggest part of what we're going to be talking about today. So in thinking about your backup strategy, you need to have automated daily backups of all of your critical systems. So ask yourself this: if I'm running a business, how many days worth of information can I not have today? So if I went to work today, can I do without the last 1 day's worth of information, 1 week's worth of information, the last 6 months worth of information? But whatever that answer is where your backup schedule needs to be set. So if you answered in your head, or if you wrote down on a piece of paper that I can't do without 1 day's worth of information, then you need to have daily backups at a minimum. What we recommend is doing what we call a 3-2-1 backup plan. That means that you keep 3 copies of your data on 2 different storage types and at least 1 copy offsite. So that might look like this. You have your data that you use that is sitting on your computer. Your computer is maybe syncing with 365. So now your second copy is a different storage type. It's sitting in the cloud, 365. And then you back up your 365 environment to maybe an encrypted storage space. So that way you have 3 different backups, 3 different formats in 3 different locations. And then you also want to make sure that whatever and however you're backing up, that you test it on a regular basis. And your testing really is going to depend on how and what you back up. You might want to test a file restore, a drive restore, a cloud restore. And again, that's going to look different based on your needs, but your IT provider will be able to help you on what should be tested and how often that should be tested. But again, test it on a regular basis. Don't think that I'm safe just because I have the backup. The next thing that you want to think about is you want to make sure that you have redundant internet and power solutions. Now, again, Depending on where you are and what kind of business you're running, how many locations you have, this is going to look different for everybody. But I would recommend that you at least look into some kind of redundancy for your internet and your power. So that might mean that you use a failover connection for your internet. For example, a lot of providers nowadays, from your IT provider, you can get a firewall that goes in your closet that comes with a built-in cellular backup. Because if one of your answers was, I cannot do without my data and my systems for more than a couple hours, well, if that internet outage is going to last for more than a couple hours, you want to make sure that you have a cellular backup to keep you up and running. The next thing that you want to do is make sure that your business has power backups, UPS. I'm sure that everybody has heard of that acronym, uninterruptible power supply. And power supplies nowadays, as far as the smaller ones, I would even look at your critical hardware inside your business. The example for that would be, do you have a system? Maybe it's the front desk person, maybe it's your doctor, maybe in a logistics facility, it's the foreman in the warehouse. You can take and put an UPS on that individual system. So you might want to start writing a list of what are the systems that, even if the power went out for 30 minutes, I want to make sure that those systems stay up and running. So that would be a list of systems that I would say that you need to look at putting a UPS on it. Then you might want to even consider putting a generator for longer outages. There's a lot of times where something will come through and maybe the outage is for a whole day. And if you cannot last a whole day without any of your systems, consider putting a generator in there. Now, of course, generator is going to be a lot more money, but we've worked with organizations before, and I would definitely reach out to your landlords if you're in a rental or a lease situation, because a lot of times inside of your lease or your rental, you can figure into the payment that they put a generator in for you. Now, think about this. The generator doesn't have to keep the entire building, everything up and running. When you write down what's your most critical or your most important devices or systems, maybe the generator only needs to keep your closet up and running, or maybe the generator only needs to keep one room up and running because that's where your most critical systems are. Well, that's a lot smaller generator and a different kind of application. So like I said, we have had organizations where the generator was part of the move-in process. So right when they got moved in, there were certain outlets in the building that already had backup power to them. And then beyond that, you want to make sure that you prioritize keeping your firewalls, your servers, and any kind of communication systems powered up. And again, all of that depends on the type of business, the type of industry you're in, and maybe the location that you're at, because that doesn't mean the same thing for every organization. The next thing that we want to look at is migrating systems to the cloud. Now, that's been around for a little while, but if you still have systems inside of your building, I would highly recommend that you take a look at your most critical applications, maybe your email, maybe an EHR if you're a medical facility, your business files, whatever that looks like. If you still have a file server of some kind inside of your building, I would look at hosting all of those critical systems. So then at least if your building goes away, those systems will stay up and running, and you can run from a temporary location with your most critical systems still online. Then make sure that compliance is part of your disaster recovery plan. And where this is key is, like the facility that we talked about was a medical facility. They moved into a temporary location. And when they moved into that temporary location, we had to make sure that that location was HIPAA compliant. So an example of that would be, what if you are running a mental health facility? A lot of mental health facilities have some kind of sound canceling, noise dampening, noise proof walls, things like that. Is that something, so the noise proofing, that you can make mobile and you can take with you into a temporary location? So think about things like HIPAA and PCI and the different compliance standards. How will that affect you if you are operating temporary, or if you're operating in a temporary facility for a day, a week? That doesn't matter. You need to make sure that is something that's on your plan and that you put on a checklist for yourself. Then look at your vendors. Sometimes the vendors will help you out with this. Reach out to each one of your vendors and find out, do they have any uptime guarantees? Even if your building is not online, can they get you up and running somehow? I know that some vendors, they want to take care of you to where if your primary way of accessing them goes away, they will send you something. They will send a person down. They will have machines for you. Obviously, that's not every vendor, but it never hurts to reach out to your current vendors and ask. On the flip side of that, what if you are in the process of looking for new vendors right now? Well, that is just like your a review process or your interview process for employees, whatever you have for that. I would add that to your review and interview process for vendors. Find out from them, what is your uptime guarantee? How can you help me in the case of a disaster? Do you have something in place that I can take advantage of? And that might make your decision between vendor A and vendor B whenever it comes time for that. The next thing that you want to make sure that you do is you want to maintain an accurate hardware and software inventory. Now, I know that this should be easy, but I guarantee you that this is something that, for some reason, a lot of organizations, it ends up being harder than it should be. You want to make sure that you have an accurate inventory and documentation for your disaster preparedness. And for a couple reasons. One is you're going to have to turn something into insurance, so you need an accurate list of that. Two, you want to make sure that if things were burnt up or blown away, that you get key systems replaced in the right order. And maybe the vendor that you have requires a certain hardware type, or requires a certain system that has to be in place. And so you have to make sure that you can't just go to the store, go online and order it right off the shelf. Maybe it has to be a custom order. So keeping those detailed records of software, licenses, configurations, all of that is key to making sure that you can get back up and running as soon as possible. Now, I would recommend that you use tools that help you automate and manage that efficiently, but don't trust those tools. So have those tools in place, but always, at least once a year, go back and do a manual check. Go back through and have, if you've got multiple buildings, put someone in charge of each building to manually go through and write down or double check the inventory. And again, we come back to keep a copy both locally and in the cloud. And that comes back to the safety deposit box, the fireproof safe, something like that. Make sure that every time that inventory is done for your only location or all of your locations, that a printed copy is made and that copy is kept with your disaster recovery plan wherever that is stored in a printed format. Then you also want to make sure that you enable your workers to have remote access and to be remote work ready. I don't know what does that look like for you? For everybody, that's a little bit different. Can they work from their cell phone? If you have a phone service where you can forward phones to cell phones, is that set up? Is that something that maybe you need to check with your phone vendor? But one of the main things is making sure that all of your employees that will need to work remote or from a remote temporary location have VPN access. Now, of course, that is key. making sure that they have secure remote access, and that secure remote access goes to whatever resources that they need. Maybe those resources are stored in the cloud, and so that VPN needs to be in place. Just like the rest of your disaster preparedness, either have them work remote on some kind of regular basis, once a quarter, have them work remote and randomize it. If you've got 25 employees, each person takes a different day of that quarter and works remote and pretends that they don't have access to the building. This will help them get used to, when I am remote, what do I need to do? How do I need to do it? How do I need to connect? And how do I need to talk to the rest of the team members? So them talking to the rest of the team members comes or brings us to our next thing. That's the cloud collaboration tools. I'm sure everybody's familiar with some of these. Is Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Teams, Zoom. I mean, because of COVID, we could go on and on and on at all the tools that are available for us now. But the key thing to all of these tools is, one, make sure that you secure these tools ahead of time. Two, make sure that you test them, use them, make them part of your daily work life. So if you invest in a remote tool like Zoom, start using that on a regular basis as your only way that you have meetings, so that everyone is used to using it, everyone has tried it, everyone's practiced with it. And same thing with all the other tools. Make that a part of their daily work life, so that the remote tools become second nature, just like the tools that they use when they're inside the office. We also want to make sure that we have access management in place, which is multi-factor authentication, MFA. That has become the pain in everyone's side, but the necessity because of today's landscape. So my recommendation would be that go ahead and implement MFA if you haven't, and limit access to your team members to business critical applications. That's for security, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit in a little bit more detail. Then the last thing on this is training. To me, training is the most important thing for this slide, and for probably anything that your team members can do. You need to ensure your team members know how to work remotely from anywhere. Ongoing training is key. And I know that there's got to be some sports fans on here with us today. So how often do you think a baseball player takes batting practice? I'm sure everybody's saying one time right at the beginning of the year, and that's good enough for the rest of the season, right? No, that's not. It's before every game, before every practice. I mean, they might even do that in their daily practice. So why do we come up with a disaster recovery plan and then never practice it? Why do we provide training to employees and then never have them train on a regular basis? So train your team until it becomes second nature and they don't even need to think about it. A disaster happens and they immediately go into disaster recovery mode without even thinking. And your team is one step ahead of you. Because what if the disaster happens when you, the boss, is out on vacation? That makes it a lot worse, but having a team that's trained and ready, that will allow you to sleep a little bit better at night. Then I know we just talked about it on the previous slide, but we're going to elaborate on this just a little bit more because it is key to security, and that is requiring MFA. Again, at a minimum, I would require MFA on email and anything remote, any kind of remote system. All of us know if we give technology just a little bit more time, MFA is going to be everywhere, whether you want it or not. So why not just go ahead and start using it and having your team members used to using it when they have to work remote because of a disaster. Then role-based access controls. This, if you're not in the health field already has that, or most places. But that's something that would be a good thing to implement, and that would be making sure that team members only have access to what they need to accomplish their work. So based on their role, that allows them access to certain systems. So then you know that if that kind of permission is already set up, when they log in remotely, they will automatically have access to every system they need to have access to. And because you've tested and you've trained and so on ahead of time, that's something you don't need to worry about. Now, as a manager or as an owner, you need to review those permissions on a regular basis for a couple reasons. One, it's just a good idea to do that. It's a good practice. It's a good practice to review everything on a regular basis. But your vendors change on a regular basis because of security, because of updates, because of changes in the software landscape. So that means that their permissions inside their software might change. Your hardware vendors change on a regular basis. That means that their permissions change. And you need to make sure that you keep up with those changes, whether they tell you or not, by regular training and testing. And so beyond that, whatever those permissions are set to, keep a backup copy of those permissions, maybe print it out. And again, in a fireproof safe or some kind of a lockbox or something like that, you want to make sure that if you have to start from scratch, you can start from scratch almost at the finish line instead of all the way at the beginning and having to learn everything from the beginning. The next thing that we have is hardening your cybersecurity defenses. Now, although this is not necessarily something that is because of a disaster or something that you would use to plan a disaster, the better you have your cybersecurity defenses, the less likely you're going to have trouble or problems, or it's going to take you longer to get something up and running. So hardening your cybersecurity defenses ahead of time makes a huge difference. My recommendation would be that you start with your patch management on all your devices, taking and making sure that regular updates, vulnerability patching, that is a must, especially in today's landscape. Make sure that all systems are checked on a regular basis and updated like they're supposed to be. Security software. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, and I'm sure that a lot of other people have heard that, yes, I have antivirus. Well, security software today is not just antivirus. Today, you need to have things that include antivirus, anti-malware, EDR, SOC, NOC, SaaS solutions. That's a lot of acronyms. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of things that it's getting down into the weeds. But if you're working with a trusted IT provider, they'll ensure that you don't have to worry about figuring out what those acronyms mean. You can go to sleep at night knowing that your data is safe and that your systems are up to date, and that if a disaster happens, that you'll be up and running quickly. But again, antivirus is not security. There's a lot more to it than that. So you just need to make sure that your security checklist is double checked with your trusted IT partner. Network monitoring. That's another key thing in disaster preparedness. Make sure that you have everything that needs to be monitored. A lot of times people want monitoring in place for things that really don't need to be monitored. So when I say monitoring, again, that means something different based on what kind of company you are, what industry you're in. So for example, you might need to put temperature controls or temperature monitoring inside of your server closet because, I don't know, maybe you're in an environment that is very hard to keep that closet cool. And if that closet overheats, all your systems are going to go down. You might be in a place where you get a lot of rain. So you need to put some kind of gauge in your server closet or in a room with critical systems that measures the amount of precipitation or how much moisture is in the air. So network monitoring can mean a bunch of different things, but your trusted IT partner will be able to let you know that this is the type monitoring you need here. This is the type monitoring you need there. And then make sure that multiple people are on that monitoring list, because it might be that an alert is going to someone that needs to know, but that alert is not going to someone that can respond and get to that building in 5 minutes. Or it might not be going to a person that can respond and log into the cloud system in a few minutes. So not only set up correct monitoring, but make sure it's going to the correct people or the correct team members. The next step that we want to talk about is making sure that you conduct regular risk assessments and simulations. So conducting regular risk assessments, my recommendation would be annual at the absolute minimum. Now, a lot of times it's a good idea to have a disaster recovery team or a risk assessment team, and they might meet once a month just for 30 minutes, or they might meet once a quarter for an hour or two. But then the risk assessment with the entire team, that's the thing that's done once a year. You should proactively identify weak points in your organization, in your systems, in your employees, in your computers, in your access to the building. And if you're doing this proactively, you should be happy if you find something ahead of time. It doesn't mean necessarily that there's something detrimental to the organization, because if you find it proactively and you were looking for it, it gives you an opportunity to fix it and have it fixed before the disaster actually happens. So every time that we run something like this, I always tell the owners of the organization that I hope it finds something, because I would rather have it find it 3, 6, 12 months before the disaster than find out about it after the disaster happens and I haven't had a chance to fix it. So again, this gives you the opportunity to fix and adjust before the problem arises. The second part of that is simulations. Just doing what we like to call tabletop disaster recovery situations. And that is, we've actually recommended to organizations that one day the owner walks into the building and just flips the switch on the internet. Maybe, pick a day that's not critical, pick a day that, there's not something really, really important going on, but walk in the building and turn out all the lights, or just something like that. Do something small like that on a regular basis and see how everyone reacts. If you have a plan in place, if you have proper training, and if you have everyone assigned to a role, when you walk in and do something like that, or even if it's planned and you do something like that, you will be able to see how everyone performs. And hopefully it's good because of the training. And hopefully if something really happens, they react the same way when a disaster happens, calm and calculated, and they get things back up and running in a coordinated effort with the entire team. Then I think one of the key things, since we're talking about technology in particular, is making sure that you partner with a trusted IT provider. And that cannot be stressed enough. You want to make sure that you are working with an experienced managed service provider. And you want to make sure that maybe they have a virtual CIO process in place where there is someone on their team that is talking to you, working with you on a regular basis, and that disaster recovery, disaster planning is something that you hear coming from them on a regular basis. That's a good thing. You want to be able to, you want to make sure that they are taking an active role in helping you with that. So that trusted IT partner, you want to make sure that they also have 24/7 monitoring, because you want to be able to make sure that if you are gone, that they are still watching in some kind of way. A lot of times that can be automated. So if they say, yeah, we have a system doing that, or yes, we have an appliance doing that, that's just fine. If you have the proper planning in place, like we talked about in the previous slides, you're going to see that in action, or you're going to see reports from them, or you're going to see notices, you're going to see communication from that provider showing you that that kind of stuff is in place for you. Now, the most important part about having an IT provider has to do with you, the business owner, the organization. And the reason I say that is you want to make sure that your trusted IT provider has an integrated role in your organization. You want to make sure that your IT partner is a part of your disaster recovery and response chain. So you want to include this partner on your internal meetings, your communication. You want to make sure that this partner is a seamless part of your team working with you proactively. And then they're not just a phone number that you call when something breaks. So, my recommendation is when you have your disaster prepared meetings, even if it's just once a quarter, that IT provider is there with you. They're there with you every step of the way, because I guarantee you that when a disaster does happen, they will be one of the first ones that you call, and they will be one of the ones that you see more than anyone else as you get back and going and back up on your feet. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that there's no organization that's immune to disaster, because disaster doesn't have to be a tornado. It doesn't have to be a hurricane. A disaster can be anything that stops you from accessing your systems or your building. So that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of things to think about. So planning is the difference between chaos and continuity. The more you plan, the more you train, the better you're going to be ready for that, and the faster you're going to get up and running. So I encourage everyone to schedule a review of your current readiness. If you've never done this before, then this is the time to start. And if you have done this before, well, maybe it's time to take a deep dive, or maybe it's time to start training and asking some more detailed questions. Because a disaster preparedness plan isn't just a safety net. It's your business's blueprint for bouncing back when the unexpected hits. And when chaos strikes, the best response is already having a plan in place. So I know that was a lot of information, but at this time, if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to take some. I'm not sure if Ram has been taking them in the chat, or if how people are going to put them in there. But if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them.
All right, thank you, Chad. We really learned a lot from this session. So next is we will be doing a schedule-free risk assessment, and you can go ahead and scan that QR code if you are interested, and also you can also give us a Google review